Hello and welcome to MartianRadio at the Theatre. I am here today to talk to two amazing theater artists about their experiences, and I am so excited to get introduced to both of them. I'd like to start with Leo. Leo, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So my name is Leo Jordan. I started a community theater group called Balefire Productions back in 2016, and we've been doing theater ever since. And I did it on my own for a little bit, for a couple years, and then just wandered into this wonderful place called Gallery Z one day, and we've been there ever since.
Awesome. And where is Balefire Productions located?
So we're technically in the basement of Gallery Z.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the dungeon, as I like to call it. So it's just storage, but like we rehearse there. I work there, so it is like a base of operations.
Amazing. And what kind of led you to Balefire? What experiences had you had leading up to there?
So I used to go to Middlesex Community College, and I went there for an exuberant amount of time. I know community college is supposed to be like, you're there for 2 years. It's never 2 years. It was more like 7. And I just kept signing up for classes to do shows.
Right.
And then one of my friends in the area started doing her own theater, and at Studio 506, it was Caitlin Crockett. She went off to do something, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to do that too. So then I just one summer got a group of people together and did this play called Slaughterhouse, which is a great name for the first play. Not Slaughterhouse 5. It was just called Slaughterhouse. By the playwright was called Norman Robbins, and it was this murder mystery that I did in high school. And I did it my senior year when I went to Minuteman. And it was the show that made me want to do theater. And I was like, I want to start whatever this journey is with that show. And it went great. And we did it twice. We did it and it was through Middlesex. So like, funny enough, at the time, I had nowhere to rehearse. I was like, what do I do? And I had contacted Karen Oster, and the president of the college, wanted them to do a murder mystery, and she didn't do anything. She was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I contacted her and was like, hey, I have a murder mystery that I want to do. I have a murder mystery that I want to do. Can I use like a space to rehearse? And she was like, yeah. Do we just want to do this in tandem? And I was like, sure. So we did it once in the Bedford campus, and then another in the Nesmith house in Lowell, which is like this beautiful mansion. And I was like, are we allowed to be in here? Like we were, but I didn't feel like we were allowed to be in there. And then I got my own studio a year later, and then just started doing shows. And then something happened with that studio, and it fell through. And it fell through on one of our show nights for no exit. Like, it was opening night and we had nowhere to go, which was ironic because I was like, we're exiting the building to find a space to do no exit. And we just wandered into Gallery Z, and I asked the wonderful woman who is also my boss now, Patricia Donahue. And I was like, hey, do you want to do this show? And she was like, sure. Just like, we moved all our lights, we moved everything. We had opening night there. And I was like, hey, we're also doing another show in 2 weeks, because this was when when I was in my 20s, used to think I could do 2 shows back to back and without a break. And we don't do that anymore. But we did No Exit, and then like 2 weeks later we did Almost Maine by John Cariani. And then we've been there ever since. And we started doing dinner theater and did that for a while, because that was bringing people into the gallery. And then we just moved on to do just regular theater. Because the dinner theater was really nice, and it was something that I had never done and she had never done. And then it was just like, we forgot that people have like food requirements, and like cooking for 30 people when the woman who wants to cook for 30 people, who is just like me and wants to do everything herself, is very hard.
Right. Well, awesome. Thank you for the introduction to yourself, Leo.
Yeah, that was a very long introduction. Sorry.
No, it's great. It's great.
It was a classic Leo introduction, though, I must say.
I like forgot where I was, and I was like, I'm just going to keep going until we're here.
Well, we know your full life story now. So
I know.
Well, we also have our special call-in guest, so I would like to hear a classic Mary introduction.
Yes.
Oh God, classic Mary. Okay, we'll give it to you. So my name is Mary Darling, sometimes Mestis. I say that because I'm recently married and I haven't made the full switch because my last name is great. My husband's last name is Mestis, So anyway, so yeah, I'm a playwright and director. And I sort of, I started out in theater young, and I thought I'd always be an actor and love acting, and I still do it on occasion, but it definitely isn't the most like fulfilling of the theatrical aspects for me anymore, since I mostly write now. I also like that writing is kind of like a solo sport for a good amount of time, and then I can come out of the woodwork like when I want to direct or when I want to see shows or whatever. So I went to an arts magnet school in Worcester, and that was really great for me because I had theater from like first grade on, basically. And creative writing and everything like that. And so I did that then. I had the fine arts in high school. I went to Fitchburg State, and like Leo, I don't believe I did it in the 4 years or the 5 years or that. So that was that. But it was, I was so involved in theater, and we were doing all this cool stuff. And what I love about college is that like, it's just like the creative hub where like anything goes, right? Like, you can stay up with your friends all night for like a showcase and like make work happen and like vibe and just like write stuff overnight. And some of it's great. Some of it's, you wrote it that night. I just like loved that vibe and sometimes miss it. So I've like taken to like the 24-hour play festivals recently to like get that high back. But outside of that, I am like focused on writing and directing right now. And what's cool about Leo is we actually met through a mutual friend, and he came to see a reading of my show Good Grief, and I always tell this story because I don't know, I love it. But he was sitting in front of me, didn't know him, just could see his red hair, and he was responding to like all of the lines so well, and this is just an early reading of the play that he later went on to direct. And I was like, well, I love this man. Like, he's getting it. He's laughing, like, I don't know. And after that, we were introduced, and he really wanted to do that play. He saw another one of my plays that was done by the Forge Theater Lab that he went on to do. And we've just had a great working relationship, out of theater, which I think is part of the beauty of it for me is, interacting with the audience or seeing how work inspires people or hearing from people. Like my husband always gets, he always says I talk too much after the shows, but it's like if people want to come up and talk about how it impacted them, like I like to give people like the time of day, and I like to know what that is. And for Leo and I think we had that, and it just turned into this really neat friendship and like creative partnership.
Yeah.
So awesome. I'll end it there. That's the classic Mary.
Yeah, and I realized I gave you all the classic Ryan introduction, which is I didn't introduce myself. I just started talking.
No.
So my name's Ryan Perry. I'm the host of the show.
We're off to a great start.
It's such a good start. Such a good start. I wanted to actually hear about, you were talking about having a great working relationship with Leo. I wanted to hear from the both of you what that working relationship is like. Is it always from the standpoint of writer and director, or have you worked with each other in different capacities? And really, what makes a good working relationship between the two of you?
I'll start us off, and then I'll let Leo finish it up, because I know we'll probably say a lot of the same things, but I'll kick it off so that now Leo knows don't, No, but I think what's neat is we trust each other. It can be really scary, I think, sometimes to trust somebody with your work. But part of what I love so much about writing is I don't like to be the first director of my work. It's kind of like rare that I do that. I used to be a one-stop shop, like Leo used to be early on, right? We all have to learn, like, hey, no, you don't do all the jobs at once.
Yeah.
And it's so much more valuable for me to have someone like him who, I've seen their work, I like their work, I trust their creative vision, and I know that they're going to honor like the text, right? That they're going to put a spin on it, right? Like the intent, I think, when I put work out is like, I love to see what the actors and the directors bring to the table, because that's part of it. And for Leo, like, we do like an early reading, because I am someone who changes a lot leading up to things. Like I'm always workshopping, but at a certain point, right, I have to be done so that they can do what they do. So he really allows for that. Like usually we coordinate, and I'm pretty hands off after that. Like he'll check in with me, and I like that, but I'm a director too, right? I don't want to be the director when he's the director. I want to give him the freedom to run where he wants to go. So I choose not to go to rehearsal. Part of it is, as we've established, I don't love to drive to Lowell. I live an hour and a half away. Part of it's laziness, right? I like the solo sport. But part of it also is like, if I was there, I might overstep, and I don't want to do that to Leo. So I think what's interesting is, like, he will text me a lot or give me updates or run things by. If there's a line that's really not working, he'll let me know. Like, I've never felt like Leo sidestepped me and, like, done stuff behind my back. And I think that's really important for a creative partnership. I think the other thing that's important for us is we laugh a lot. Like, we constantly have a good time, whether it's in person or, like, via our terribly written in text. And I think, I'll hand it off to Leo to, talk trash about how our relationship is actually terrible. But but I think that's what makes a good creative partner is just, we work in different capacities and we trust each other.
Yeah, no, I agree. Cause I've never had that experience before with like someone working with someone like Mary. And for me, it was like she said, she came up to me and she was like, "Hi, I need to tell you, you just laughed and you made me like enjoy my own play." And I was like, "Well, I enjoyed it. Like I was just laughing unabashedly at this play, and because it was just funny, and it wasn't a stage reading. It was just a dramatic reading."
Are we talking about? Yeah, wait.
Good
are
grief.
We talking about? Well, okay. Well, it was funny, but there was sadness too.
Oh yeah, but then I laughed at the sadness. Yeah. I mean, it's about grief. Obviously, it was sad, but
we just have to get that part in there. But it is also extremely hilarious. Like,
but I feel like me and Mary also laugh inappropriately at a lot of things, and I generally laugh at things that are sad. So I was laughing the whole time. And then when I went on to direct the show, which I never thought I would do, I was like not laughing as much. But our relationship started from there, and it was, ironically enough, I had come and I was doing my own show, and I was like very selfishly in my own head, and I was like, I'm coming here because of our friend who's in this, but I'm very open to like see what this is. And I was so emotionally raw from doing my own thing that I laughed so much because I was like, this was great. This is exactly what I needed. And meeting Mary, I was like, this is also exactly what I needed. And I never thought we would have the relationship that we do have. And it's just, I never feel like that the trust isn't there. And I've never had someone sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, and I think what was neat about it too, because like Leo's saying, like it's really hard to come by people, I think. And I mean, it is and it isn't, but I think when it comes to like, I've read Leo's work and stuff too, and like, we're able to talk about that kind of stuff, and we have a different relationship on that level too. But I think what's tough is like, we have to give him a shout out, Leo, or it's not right. I always had my good friend Noah Dawson, who helps me like workshop all my work and everything like that, and then we kind of take it to whatever happens with it. And so he was kind of like my OG on that, and now we both are we both know Noah, love him, but I just kind of felt like, oh man, no one else will ever be able to like capture what I'm capturing or help me workshop or anything. So it was like it was really special, I think, to get to meet Leo and still be able to do that with somebody else and have it work.
Yeah. And I love Noah. We always make that joke where it's like, he'll workshop it and then I will just do the show. Like one of us will direct it, but Noah will workshop it. And it's just...
Noah has to be involved.
Yeah, he has to be involved in some way. And he does a fantastic job, and he comes to all the shows and he loves them. But it's just like, I thought of this earlier because I knew I was coming here. And I was like, Mary to me sometimes is like my own inner voice. So like working in tandem with her feels like you're just working as one unit, even when we're not even talking about stuff. And like, of course, I'll like text her or call her after, be like, yeah, that line didn't work. And she's like, okay. Or like people will be like, I don't know if I should say this. And I said, then don't say it. And I'll let Mary know. Like, I'm not like cutting the script into pieces because I'm still like, it's still not my show that I'm writing. But I know.
And we've been able to have those conversations too. Like you'll bring her to me or we'll have the actor input and we'll either say like, oh no, I think, all right, how about just this or whatever. But usually I think what captures this, and also that was really touching of you to say, thank you. But I think the biggest part of it is the collaboration. Like we have a collaborative spirit, not just between us, but I think we value the input that from the cast and crew sometimes too. And I think sometimes that can get lost. Like I don't think of when Leo's directing or when I'm directing something, like I don't think of myself as like the end all for everything. Like I do think we have to be encompassing of the opinions sometimes of other people, and not to say like obviously I don't want, there's a fine line, right? Like, don't abuse the script, and like, if you don't like it, don't be part of it. But
Yeah.
I think, there is like an element of being able to be flexible on certain things. And I think one great example, even Leo, and that we should talk on, is with Good Grief, with the casting. When that person dropped, and then we were able to make these like fantastic changes to make a show that was even more inclusive, to have really great representation of a community that I hadn't even necessarily tapped into. I just like hadn't had a chance to. And we had great actor feedback, and we were able to like make adjustments to the character to make them non-binary. And it was so personal to that actor, but it was so personal to me too, because it was just like a really beautiful experience that came out of us being able to adapt.
Yeah.
So.
Mary, would you actually mind telling us a little bit about Good Grief, just to give us a bigger concept of this play that keeps coming up?
Yes, I know. We talk about it.
I know. We talk about it like everyone knows this show, which they should.
You've all seen this, right? But no.
And now they will. Everyone's going to listen to this and know what Good Grief is now.
Well, we can plug Good Grief because I am anticipating doing it again in next fall. Actually, winter, fall, whatever November is.
Yeah.
People. I don't know. It's winter to me. Because I think it's so powerful, and I think Leo brought it to life so much for me. But I'll explain what it is first, because everybody now listening is like, okay, get to it. Like, what are you doing? So I can only write dialogue. I just want to say that. But at one point, like in 2016-ish, I was like, who knows? Maybe I can write a novel. I can't. I don't do that. But I was working with a friend of mine. Shout out to him too, Ethan White. And we were just seeing like, what is it to interview people on depth? Because I love to interview people when I'm writing. And so we had set up a bunch of interviews, and like people want to talk, like the people who want to talk about that stuff want to talk about it. And for me, I can come off pretty cold. My husband calls me the Tin Man. With like, and it's not because I don't care, it's because it feels like unnatural for me sometimes to be like empathetic. And I think I come off a little robotic, but it's not intentional. So these interviews like humanize me. Like I'm like crying in the room with these people, talking about the death of, their dad or their brother or their sibling or, whatever the case. So I'd actually interviewed my now husband's sister, and she had like just a lot of loss in her life, like her dad and everything like that. And it was a really beautiful interview. It was probably the best of the batch. And it was just so raw, and I had known her so well and everything too. And then she died in 2017, like suddenly, like she was hit by a train. And it was very tragic, and it was obviously very like hard on our family and everything else. And I had been doing all those interviews, didn't know how they were going to happen. And Ethan and I we have like a little bit of, different styles writing. So I don't think we were necessarily on the same page of like what the concept would be, but we were having fun doing it. And then I had finally, like my husband kind of eventually was like, I need something. I don't know what it is. Like we're not like religious and stuff. But he was like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like I'm really struggling. So I found like a grief group. And at that point I didn't know, like, cause I'm so awkward about these things. I was like, I'm going to send you with your sister and, let me know how it goes. But that night I started writing Good Grief, or what would become Good Grief. And I'd gone back to the interviews, and I'd done all the stuff, and it was a really neat thing. And eventually I started going to the group with them. And so Good Grief centers a person who loses their sibling. And it's a very different context. Like she's a writer and she's all these other things, and her brother's a lot younger than her, my brother is like 10 years younger than me. And he goes out on prom night, and he ultimately passes away in a train accident. Like he's hit by a train. And so it's very sad stuff, but they find this like community in the grief group. And there's so much, like what I found about going to this grief group is like, while it is very sad, of course, there's so much like humor, and there's so much like human stuff that happens there too, because like it's sad, but there's also like the funny stuff that like just occurs, right? Like when you're dealing with this stuff, or like that you remember about these people. But I think what's neat about Good Grief is like people will tell you who've seen it, like they do, like Leo, right? Like they die laughing.
Yeah. That's
a bad choice of words, but they laugh like gallows humor, right? Like they laugh like very hard during it. But then you're like, what's neat about seeing it fully, like when Leo did it, I just saw it, and I know what's going to happen, and I'm bawling my eyes out because he did such a beautiful job, like staging it. But then next thing you know, you're laughing so hard, you're crying too. And so I won't ruin the end or anything like that, but I think it's a really neat piece, and there's a lot of really great music in it too, like hits we all know, a lot of nostalgic stuff, but throughout it, but I think it just kind of hits so many people because it covers the grief stuff, but it hits on addiction and other themes too that, you know, are present in so many people's lives, even a sad distance. So now that I've rambled at length, so that is what the grief is about.
And Leo, would you tell us a little bit about your staging of that production and how you were able to take those experiences that were written about and put them on the stage?
Yeah. Well, I saw that play when I was doing a play about my own grief, which I was like, oh God. So I saw Good Grief when I saw it, Mary, I think it was still called Tracks when I went to that reading.
Oh my God, right. I change my names all the time. Yeah, it was.
Or it just changed. Or it just changed.
I think it had just changed. It was they booked it or whatever as Tracks, and then I was like, name change. I'm a difficult writer, and I do that kind of stuff. Yeah. And yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, I was like, is it about Charlie Brown? No. I was like, no, because I knew the original title. But I went to see that when I was working on. I was not directing it, but I wrote a play called Two Guys at a Bar, and that was at Gallery Z in 2019. And I went to Good Grief, and I just laughed, and I never thought I would get the chance to direct it. And I asked Mary, I was like, hey, like, can I do this? And we did it. And I like Gallery Z is such an interesting, for those people who have never been there, it is an art gallery. It's like an art gallery cafe co-op space.
It's intimate.
Yeah, it's so intimate. You're right there. Like, you're on the same level. And the stage, like the little stage that they have is like 6 inches higher than the rest of the room. So like you're in the action. And I remember specifically when I was thinking about staging it, I was like, no question, we're doing like a circle like they would have in that group. But the circle is in the middle of the room. So like you also feel like you're in that group. And
you do. You feel, that's the thing that was so beautiful is like, and I think that's one thing, like I wrote it, right? I know what happens. But I felt like I was part of this. And you could see the people because it's a circle, just to elaborate on that as an audience member.
Yeah.
Like, you can see the people who are audience members on the other side of this circle too. So you're just like forced to look at everybody in their emotional state. And it was as an audience member and the actors. And it's like overpowering, like on so many levels.
Wow.
Yeah. And it just encapsulated that grief because it's like the cast is in the scene, obviously, but like you feel that audience energy like tenfold just by being in that space. And especially with one of those kinds of shows, because like grief is hard and like grief is hard to talk about. Grief is hard to act. And like, because it needs to come from this real place. And I wouldn't have directed a show like this. Not that you need to have an experience to direct every show, because like I didn't murder someone, I directed a murder mystery, you know, like that. But like I had an understanding of what that is, what goes into it, I guess. But like I experienced my own grief, and I was like, I know how to pour myself into this in a way that it will just permeate into this group and then into the audience. And like I'm still not doing it. Like I'm constructing the scene, like it's all the actors that are doing the real work. But like that space is so intimate and so beautiful. And like, you don't need that much space. Like I've always been a minimalist with my staging, and me and Mary are the same
and
way.
That's why I love, I was going to say, that's why I love Leo. Cause like you don't, and shout out to the people who do work on sets and everything. I love that work and I think it's beautiful. But being people who are like producing their own work or like funding it and stuff, sometimes like, you can't have that. And we're not artists. So like, no. So like I think the space you don't have to have it all. And like Leo knows, like thank God Leo can translate what I write onto the stage, because like some of my stage directions are you should talk about that one thing, Leo, because he's asking me what it was like the stage. The thing I wrote, you know exactly what you can talk about it. But Leo's a genius at applying his concepts to things and at taking what I do and putting them on the stage. And that's why I was saying like I never direct my work first. I want to see people do like I'm fortunate, like I would like to direct some of these plays now that I've seen them done by a few other people and done by Leo, because they've brought them to life. Like my brain isn't creative on that level until I've seen things. Leo is just like a genius at stuff like that.
Thank you. and like, well, it's easier when you don't write it, because you can't see like certain things. Like Mary rewrote this one scene, and it was a scene. So it's supposed to be like, there is spoiler, but there is a scene where one of the characters is overdosing, and she is in this like dream state, and she's racked with all this grief, and she sees the character Matt, who was also played by someone named Matt, which was just crazy. And she sees him, and they have like this dance that they didn't get to have at prom, and then it goes into Third Eye Blind's Jumper. And it's like every person from the grief group comes in and like sings a line from it. And I remember
that's like applicable to them.
Yeah. Ugh. And the both of them. And I remember the whole cast was like, how are we going to do that? And I was like, don't worry, I'll figure it out. And we luckily have these like colored lights. Like it was like these dream sequence. Like you have like the red and blue flashing lights. We came out and like we reenacted like him, the character of Matt, like dying, getting brought back to life. Like it just represented everyone's struggle at that moment. And I think if sometimes like I do shows at Gallery Z and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that somewhere else. And Good Grief did go on to make sense in other spaces. But sometimes I'm like, it will never be that encapsulated moment. And I think that specifically that number just works so well because
so beautiful.
I don't know what that space does. It's like the art on the walls, the lights, like the way it's staged. Cause like I kind of try and think of a show like if it was like blocks. I know that sounds weird. And like things that are like cut in half. Like we had the train tracks, but they were just like a piece of the tracks. So like it's just enough to be like, oh, they're in another scene, but you walk past this pole and now you're in the living room. But like there's also a scene happening over here. So it's like I do expect the audience to like I've learned over the years, don't expect so much of the audience because I love them. They pay the bills, but you need to be simple enough. No shade to that. No shade to that part of the audience. But you need to be simple enough to understand. And like I feel like if you do these like little things like that, it makes it make sense. And a space like Gallery Z like just fills in the blanks. Like if you have enough of the like the blocks or like whatever, or like the train tracks cut in half, it fills it in enough. And you're like, oh, okay, we're in like 3 different places. And it's almost like when you stare at something for too long, the whole room just blends into what you think it looks like, what you think should be. It
literally does there, though. Like, I can just attest to that. And I think what's crazy about that is I write this play, there's train tracks, there's all this other crap that you're like, okay. And in my head, I'm like, well, it's someone else's problem who has to stage it, right? And so it was Leo's problem. And like he was saying, like, you know, the lighting, the everything, like, it, like, I don't even know. It blew me away to be like, wow, all right, so, like, this is possible to stage. He's done it, and he's done it in such a way, like, he's saying, like, the way he played out the spaces was so seamless, and we were all so bought in. Like, you could hear, like, a pin drop between things, because people are like, oh, my God. Like, and the spacing just makes sense. Like, it's really cool. Like, I could have never pictured that spacing that way. So, like, Leo has, like, made me a better director in ways now when I'm trying to think about approaching work, because, and I think that's what's great is like learning from other people and seeing what they do with things. Like I can 100% say like that experience like motivated me to be like, okay, like, wow, I have some thoughts on how, not even just for Good Grief, but in general, like on how to use different spaces, because I don't love the traditional stage setup always. So like seeing something in a gallery, like I went on to like now book galleries for things where I was like, yeah, obviously I would like that. You can do things that you would never think. And I think it's a different experience for the audience. And I think it brings in the non-traditional theater folks sometimes. And I like that.
Yeah, I really like that. Thank you for saying that too. Because I mean, working with Mary too, like working with you makes me a better writer, because I only like writing dialogue, and I'll write dialogue sometimes. I'm like, well, how would Mary say it? And
stop. He didn't bring us on here to like be like, you're so great. No, you're so great.
People are saying like they hate each other.
I'm just convinced that Leo agreed to do this just so he could cover his tracks for the whole murder thing.
Oh my God.
He was very adamant that he's never killed somebody.
I've never killed anyone.
Yeah, and he keeps talking about it, and he'll probably bring it up again. Like, that's where I also am like, okay, Leo. Sure.
So do you think, because you initially did Good Grief in the round, do you think it could work on a typical proscenium stage with
it's better
a
in the
full
round.
set?
Yeah, I mean, Mary did it in Worcester at JMac.
Yep.
And I mean, it still worked.
It's a different vibe.
Yeah.
It still works. It does work. And I don't want to like knock it in that way, but I was just saying to Mike, because I am interested in doing it again and like, and you know, incorporating some stuff back in and everything like that. I think it can succeed both ways, but and I thought audiences reached in both ways, but I think I'd like to do it in the round again because I think people are part of it that
Yeah.
way, right? And I think part of it is being uncomfortable, and you are uncomfortable, especially when you have to watch other audience members you don't know feel it. And I love to make people uncomfortable, not even in a bad way, but in the way of like, life's uncomfortable, right? Like we're all going through that kind of stuff all the time that we don't want to feel. And I think theater should be a reflection of that. And I think, you know, part of why people are coming is to feel and to connect with themselves. One of the most beautiful things about the grief is like, and I'm sure Leo can attest this too, like, and Leo was, one of these people who came up to me to talk to me after about certain things, his dad and everything, is that like, it opens the door. Like, I can't tell you how many people have like made me more human by like expressing like what it meant to them, or like they had just lost so-and-so, or they have a son who overdosed, and all these different things. And like, I don't know, like that's the part that like is so, rewarding is not even the right word. It's just so human. And I think the round captures that best. I think both ways work, but I think the round is best. And I would have never thought to do it in the round. That's why I'm like, Leo's a genius.
Yeah, I'm just not saying to the genius. I'm agreeing to the round.
I bet.
But I do think like a play like that needs to be in the round. You need to experience it.
Now, however, a play like On Our Terms could be either. We've seen it both ways, but I also loved it in the round. Like, and because like then we were part of the memories. Almost.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What is On Your Terms? What makes that one different from Good Grief?
Well, it's
so
just
different.
a comedy. It's a raunchy comedy.
You're supposed to
feel
laugh
like
at this one.
You have to laugh. Yeah, and you're not inappropriate. On Our Terms is another one Leo came to see, and I again happened to be behind Leo.
Both times. My favorite, wait, my favorite memory is, because I wrote this in my like director's note, and by director's note, I mean just like the monologue. Sometimes I'm like, am I just directing to write a page on the playbill?
You are.
No, it's part of it. But I sat in front of her with my good friend, and we were talking, and I just hear Lee, like, and I was like, who? I was like, and I thought it was Mary behind me, but I like had to act not. I was like, oh hey, and I was like, this is great. And in my head, I was like, don't mess up. You have to laugh because the playwright is right behind you. And I was like, don't mess this up, because we hadn't worked with each other at that point. So I was like, don't mess this up.
Not yet. But didn't I stupidly, I'm pretty sure I tapped you, or on the intermission, I was like, hey, it's you, right? Like, I did something so weird.
No, it was
like
in the beginning. You were like, Leo. And you're like, oh, okay, that is you. I turned right around.
I'm so uncomfortable. Like, and I was like, well, and Mike was so embarrassed by me. I was like, if it's not him, then he'll be like, no, it's not me. Like,
I remember you were like, I'm so awkward. Sorry. I was like, I'm also awkward. It's fine.
That's why we're okay together. So it was him. And then he did feel the pressure to enjoy the show, but he enjoyed it so much that he called me while I was at a bachelor party that weekend and was like, I'm going to produce the show in the next year, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I was like crying because I was kind of half drunk because I was at a winery. So I was like in a bathroom taking this call, like, okay, wow. Like, that's awesome. Like, he hit me at a time where the feels were like the feels. So On Our Terms is not the feels. It's a comedy. There's some deeper stuff in it. And again, so where Noah and I workshop that was just for point. So On Our Terms is it's two people who take on this service called Marry Me Darling. It's a dating service they pay for, and they're in a conference room, and they have I won't give away some of the other characters that are, we'll save that, but they essentially are negotiating a contract for quote unquote the perfect relationship, right? And throughout it, they have different agenda items that prompt them to share memories. So there's an ensemble that plays the cast of these memories of them with other people, like past dating experiences. And it goes in chronological order, kind of from like, you start out with like, one of them's like a teen scene at camp. Like, well, both of them are at camp, and they're very funny.
Both of them, yeah.
And what's neat about this play is Noah and I workshopped it. And when the Forge Theater Lab agreed to do this show, it didn't have a through line. So like the dating contract wasn't part of it. It was called Relationships at that time.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because it was like a scatter shot of like relationships, like from like in chronological order, like they're all standalone pieces, different people, whatever. And it goes from like, when you're really happy about it to like when you're divorced. So not that I think, now that sounds like a cynic. I'm not, but I kind of am, but it's fine. And we were workshopping it, and then I was like, something has happened. So for point of reference, I was working for our town at that time as the recording clerk for the town council. So I was in on all these like contract negotiations and like other things. And one night where they told me, then it just clicked. I was like, these people are in a conference room negotiating something. Like, there needs to be a through line. And so we got that, and it was really neat. And it's grown over the years. So like that was first done in what, like 2018 or something like that, 2017, I don't know.
No, I think it was 2019.
Noah directed it. Oh my God, yeah. Maybe,
I
yeah,
think.
it was before the pandemic. So yeah, it probably was 2019. Something like that. And Noah had workshopped it with me. Again, shout out to him. And then he directed it. And it was fine then. But then when Leo went to do it too, like, you know, like, things change, like the climate changes. So it was a really good opportunity to do some rewrites. And we were able to have so many of these conversations that I think made the play even better. And like, it was fine then. Like, we thought it was funny. But I think part of, for me, being a playwright is like, well, I'd love to be like, this is the final draft of Leo. No, it never is with me. And except I think Good Grief, the original version with a couple tweaks, is the final draft. I just want to put that out there. But at either rate, On Our Terms is good where it is now. I think there's nothing really. There's like one weird concept I'm interested in, but like that's it. And I think what's cool about it is you see yourself in it. So like it's a lot of just different relationship things people go through, right? Like sometimes you're with someone and you know it's not working for XYZ. Sometimes someone wants more out of you. Sometimes you hate the person, but you just happen to be with them still until you have the big blowout. Like, I don't know. And so it's fascinating. And then you have to find out, like, do these people sign the contract or not? Like, what's the tipping point for them? And I think there's the pressure, too, because they're paying for this service to do it for them. So that's kind of what it's about. And Leo just took it and ran with it. And, like going to see it, I've seen it twice now. So I actually am in the process of, like, I think I could put my hands on it because I've seen it done by two of my best friends who are amazing. And it's fun. It's a small cast show. It's like a really good time. And it's just, I think it's kind of timeless, but I'm actually working on it. I call it, it's like sophisticated older cousin, the translator, which is like the deeper relationship stuff, like the you're already in it kind of stuff, like where these people are just like broaching it, talking about failed stuff. It's like its own thing. I'll let Leo give his spin on it because Leo, I don't even know what he did, but he shook it up. Like oh my gosh! Like what I love about it is like, well, it's we haven't even said what like On Our Terms is absurd. It's an absurdist comedy. That's how we should describe it.
And you're in like you go through like Mary said, you're in this like conference room, and it's this it's Jane and John. So already it's kind of like a blank slate, and you get to know them through these memories. So like how I stage it was the table and the conference room is like on stage. And then the big play space is all these like the memories that they're reliving. So it's like, item number 1. And the whole time there's this overhead voice like God. And I have to give it. I wasn't going to tell them about the voice, damn it. But now you have. Sorry.
No, we can talk about it because the voice is kind of amazing. Yeah. She's the AI of the whole thing.
And like 2 of my really good friends played the voice in both instances. But I have to give it.
And they were both so good.
Yeah. And like shout out to one of my really good friends, Joy, who she was the most current voice. And just, she's always had this like very like secretary who knows exactly what she's asking you to do and knows that you can do it. But I don't know where I was going with that sentence, but like just that like high end secretarial voice with like a little tinge of like passive aggressiveness. And I was like, perfect. Especially when she is given some character like that. That's just like, I love when she plays characters like that. And she loved it too, because she was like, awesome. I don't got to be on stage. I can just sit there and record my lines. Awesome. You can do, and like, she trusted me to do that. And I love that I have this trust with these people. Cause like, same thing like Mary, she was like, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'll trust you. And I like added some new things that weren't even in the script. Like sometimes she sounds robotic. So it's like, is the voice real? Or is she like sentient?
Even I was like, not sure. I wrote it and I was like, man, I don't know what the voice is anymore. And I love that because the audience has to like think it for themselves and they can be thinking different things.
Because it's supposed to be, you would think it's like an automated thing because she's like item number 1 or agenda item number 1 and you go through this contract. So like the voice is instrumental in like seeing these memories. So it's like, think about, I directed the show. I'm like, what was the first agenda item? It was like, think about a past.
It was like pleasantries. Then it was that. Yeah.
Like a childhood experience or something. And then you go through like John's experience at summer camp and then Jane's experience at summer camp. And the voice propels you through this. But we added like some things where it's like, is the voice real? Is like Joy just in the booth somewhere just like laughing her ass off? And like, these guys are never going to get together. And like, that was my kind of take on it. And because Joy would do that. Like she would just be like, okay. And then like, just kind of like set the animals free and just watch. And that's what I kind of wanted from that. And I feel like that is kind of what dating is like sometimes.
And I think that with the voice too, Leo, like she started to like, So, like, where you're saying too, like, is she a robot? Is she whatever? We don't know.
Yeah.
Because at the end, right? She's like, well, throughout it, she's turning on one party.
Yeah.
And then toward the end, it's almost like she's, like, instigating things and the rules and the other things. So, like, you played it, Joy played it so well.
Yeah. And that's what I always thought that voice was. Like, she was instigating things and, like, propelling, like, no. And the gallery just like lent itself to that space because like the play space was exactly where like the grief group was. So like anything that's in that big area, you're on the same floor. So like you're in these memories. You're like, oh my God, am I at summer camp? Like, am I eating a very oversized phallic looking Slim Jim? No, but I feel like I am. And like some of the scenes, I've loved absurd comedies. So like it's just, everything was extreme. Like the slutty teenager was very slutty. Like there was just like emphasis on like just innuendos galore. And like but there was also real scenes. Like there was a real scene in the car and there was a real scene. There was another scene about grief in the elevator, but it was done so off the wall. Like there's do you want me to say it, what it was?
You say what you want to say, my friend.
I already spoiled. Like, there's a voice. There's like an assassin that assassinates John in the elevator, and like the whole thing was like an allegory for like him wanting to. He was like the story was about his like recreation of like how he lost his wife, but he like decided to take himself out in his retelling.
And he just like took creative liberties with it in this story he's telling. And I think the other part about those stories are like. I think the other interesting part, and you might hear my dog in the background, he's kind of like walking around. The other interesting part is that there's always the real story, right? And then there's how people tell stories. And I think that On Our Terms is kind of that. And you see it throughout, like with this allegory of like, he really is wife side, not him. Yeah. And really, like, there's another scene like that too, where she's like, well, that's just what I imagined happened. And it kind of like becomes more absurd throughout, where you start to be like, what is the truth here? And like, also like, and when I tell stories, what am I doing? Like, am I telling anything here what really happened? Or like, have I taken these creative liberties?
Yeah. Like, and my favorite scene was the one where Jane is like, oh, I think she was like, I was in a coma and this is what I remember.
My favorite.
And it's a soap opera.
We have to credit Noah Dawson.
Yes, because that is not, I can't take credit for that. Because I watched it and I laughed so hard.
So I wrote it, and it was fine. And Noah was like, hey, what if we do it as a soap opera? I was like, yeah, whatever. You're directing if that's what you want. And I went to see it, and it was when I saw Noah's rendition of it, that was hands down my favorite scene of the whole thing. And I wrote it in after that as that to be like, this has to be this way moving forward. Yeah. And you both took different spins on it, but that scene still like reigns supreme on so many levels because it's so absurd.
It was so absurd, and it was even more absurd because like the costuming in that scene was like we had the guy with the chest popped open. I have to shout out my good friend Jacqueline Doyle from Jack Attack Clothing. We had this like I don't even know what you would call it. It was like a flowy leg skirt. She's gonna be like, wow, Leah, I do clothes and you don't even know what it's called. But like the costuming in the show was
it was so hot. It was amazing.
We did a tango and like everything, you just see red and black moving. Like it was just beautiful. And I put one of the other cast members. This was not written in the script. And I was like, I don't
know. So
I don't even think I told Mary. I was like, yeah. I was like, you're gonna see someone coming in with the step stool. Maybe. I don't even think I told her because we use these like cubes and I use them in Good Grief and I've had them for years. And I feel like a good theater place needs like blocks. Like I was saying, like I literally use blocks and, some places just use it for rehearsal. I'm like, no, we're using these for the show. And I wanted to create levels. Yeah. I wanted to create levels sometimes. I was like, how are we going to get these actors on the cubes? Cause some of them wearing like 9-inch heels, like, these combat boot things. And I put in one of our actors, he came in with a step stool and it was like an added layer of comedy. So it's like, they're constructing the scene. So it's like, as an audience, like it was a very meta show. So like
and I think even initially, I don't remember too, like I'm drawing a blank because whatever, but like it's written that these scenes get drawn out, and like in the original, they were like literally drawn out at the beginning on like an easel with paper that got ripped off, and like and then like the next like so like they get like spelled out before they're like happening, in some ways. And I don't even remember what you did for that, Leo, or if we just scratched it and it worked so
I
well.
remember I texted you. I was like, I'm not doing the drawings.
Yeah, and I was glad because I hated the crumpling of the paper. No disrespect to the OG production, but like it took up so much time that I was like, never again. And I don't know if I scratched it too, or if you just scratched it, and then later I was like, yeah, cut. Like from some script.
I think
it
you
was
still
a cool concept, but it was like a time suck.
Yeah, I think you still put it in there, and you're like, you could use it, whatever. And I was like, oh no, I'm not using it. And I remember telling you, I was like, even if it wasn't a soap opera, I was doing it as a soap opera. That scene.
Yeah, it was perfect.
And like,
We've rambled. We've done it again.
I know, and I need to credit Noah because I wouldn't have thought of using the cubes because there were like they drew the scenes on like there were like these slats of wood behind them, and they had massive white paper, and they would have like Harold on the Purple crayon size like markers, and they would draw like a tree.
Yeah.
And then like the cubes would be like headlights to the car. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I thought of using the cubes, but I was like, well, we're in an art gallery, so I'm not drawing anything on the cubes. Like it's your imagination. And I just
and
like,
it was perfect. Like I didn't even realize. I just had to ask you if you did or didn't do it because it was so good.
I know. I didn't do any drawing. Because I don't even think we painted the cubes. No, they were just white.
No, I think they were white, and it worked.
Yeah.
I was bought in, so.
That's awesome. We've talked a lot about the writing that Mary's done, but you talked about some writings that you had. Is your writing?
Oh God.
Is your writing process different than what Mary has explained?
I mean, yes. I mean,
She's like, absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm jealous of Mary because like I wish. Well, I do the really irresponsible thing of thinking I can write, direct, and produce my own work, which like I can't. And Mary just gets to write it and send it to me, and I'm like, thank you. And like I think I'm at the level where like I want to do the same thing. Like if Mary wants to start directing, I'm like, here's a piece, bye.
Yes.
Like because I don't want I want that same level of trust in someone. But I have the first thing I did, actually not the first thing, but the first full length play I did not direct, but I was a part of the whole thing. So like I got to be Mary with one of my best friends ever, Josh, and he directed the show, and it was a small cast. It was like 4 people, and it was called Two Guys at a Bar, and it was at Gallery Z, and that was my good grief. So like I a couple years ago, it's gonna be 5 years this January, my father passed away. And I had written this play like years ago, and like I'm not the best writer, but I like writing dialogue, which is why I always have gravitated towards theater. And like I'll piss through a play reading it rather than a book, like in one sitting. I read a whole play the other day, and I bought 3 books, and I've only read 70 pages of it, and I haven't read it since last week. So like there's even that in my brain I can only process like plays, I guess now. Sometimes I forget how to read. But
I'm the same way. I just want to plug that. I can only read plays and not real books.
I hate it. But so my writing process I think is similar but a little bit different. And I had years to write this play, and it was a short play. Everyone loved it, and I was like, I don't really like it. And I had written it before my father passed away, and it had nothing to do about death. That's a lie. There was like one thing about death, but it didn't make sense to me at that moment. And I was like, I want to rewrite this. And I have never been able to do this again, but I rewrote it in 2 weeks because I was like, well, I have like 2 weeks to do this before auditions. And I was like, let's do it. And it worked. And people loved it. And we did it in the round. That was the first show that we stopped doing dinner theater with. So like it was the first show, like you didn't hear anything. You didn't hear the clanking of silverware, which was fine. But like there was no distractions. Like you were just in the action. There was this humongous bar on stage. And I know the title is misleading because there were other characters. It wasn't just 2 guys at a bar. But the focal point is the 2 guys at a bar. And I got to put in, because I think me and Mary are similar in the way where we put in, even if it's not our own stuff we're experiencing, we put in experiences that have happened to us, people that we love. And this was just kind of my, I don't know if magnum opus is the right term, but like to my father, like I never did a service for him. Like that was the service. Like the eulogy that's said in that show is about one of the characters' dads. So like I completely changed the whole thing of the show. It starts off like really fun. these two guys meet each other, and it's a comment on sexuality because one of them is like, yeah, I was going to get married. And then my fiance found out I was having sex with her half brother in the coat-check closet at the bachelor party because he didn't come out to himself first. And like, it was that writing those characters was very interesting to me because the relationships were so strong. Because like a week goes by, these two guys meet, like one broke up with his girlfriend, the other one just ended a whole relationship with this person that he does love but not in that way and feels awful. And then the next week, and it originally, I wrote it for a scene for a directing class at Middlesex that my friend was in, who did direct the show. And I was like, oh, let's meet next week. That's the end of the scene. It was Christmas Eve. So like the next scene, I was like, well, next year would be New Year's Eve. And I was like, why would you meet someone on New Year's Eve just to like have a drink? It's like super low key. And so the characters were like, yeah, I didn't realize it was New Year's Eve. And then he patches things up with his fiance, and then she comes. So it's like that relationship was so strong that all he needed to say was like, sorry, and really talk to her. And then she's like, yeah, of course I'll be there. And then she hits it off with that guy. And like, now they're in this like triangle situation. And then what I wasn't expecting was when I do try and put like a lot of gay things in my writing, because it's not me trying to be like gay exists, but also yes, it's just, it's there. And like, I don't know why people are focusing on it. It's just a part of the journey.
Yeah, 100%. I just wanted to also ask the two of you if you have anything that is coming up in the near future, any plugs that you wanted to make about anything you may be working on, or if people wanted to collaborate with anything that you're doing, maybe with Balefire or with your works, Mary, if there's any way they can get in touch with you in order to become parts of those things.
Do you want to go first?
It sounds like the three of us need to do a grief triple header. But
I know.
So let's talk on that. Do I want to go first? I know Leo and I are both like scattered about all of the things we're doing.
I just pulled out my calendar, so I had the right dates in my head. So yep.
Okay, so why don't you go then? Because I'm going to talk out my butt about this. So you go first.
Yeah. So Mary knows this whole day I've been like, I don't know what. So I've been debating, like we talked about high beams. I think need some more time to workshop. And I rewrote it a little bit, and I'm in that writer space where it's like, I don't even remember like what the original draft is right now. And like, I need people to read it that isn't me. And I just need someone else to take care of it for like a little bit. So I have decided, and I already know what the rest of our upcoming season is, but the spring was kind of like, I don't know. And so I've decided, because the Almost Maine was like one of the first plays that we did at Gallery Z. No Exit was the first one, but it was like, we got to do this right now. And Almost Maine was the first one we rehearsed in the space. We like did the whole thing. And John Cariani's writing, and we've done another show, Lovesick, and we did it during like right in the summer of the pandemic. And like, it was terrifying to do a show during the pandemic because like we had like 5 audience members, we live streamed it, and it was such a poignant show too, because I was like, I wasn't trying to do a show called Lovesick during the pandemic. Yeah. And we were supposed to do another show, and that didn't pan out. And I was like, well, just do a John Cariani show. I always love him. So I kind of think of, and he always like brings me back to life whenever I'm like in a weird struggling writer director space. So I've finally decided that we're going to do his only full length play that like is not vignettes, and it's called Last Gas. And it's about this gas station, like way up in Maine, like right before the Canadian border. And it has all the similar feelings that I wanted from High Beams for an audience to understand. Like the grief, the feeling stuck because the car never really moves anywhere. And it's just like, it's a gas station, and it's people who are stuck. That has grief. It has a character who's, she's just in town for the day because it's her mom's funeral. So like you get to hear like what she did with her life. Did she do anything with her life? And it's like really poignant, and it makes people think. So that is officially going to be Balefire's spring show. So our first show of the season. And we're hosting auditions for that. Let me pull my calendar up again so I don't get this wrong, because I'm so organized. January 16th and 17th at Gallery Z. So we're having auditions for that. And then in the summer, we're doing a show called The Boys in the Band, which was just on Netflix. And I made this horrible joke every time we did On Our Terms, which I was like, we're doing the show and maybe Netflix will pick us up. They won't. But like everyone laughed and I was like, thank you for coming to my like weird comedy special every time I do a curtain speech. And then
They are weird comedy specials every time.
I never know what's going to come out and it's horrendous. It's not horrendous, but like I feel like it's horrendous. So Last Gas is our spring show. The Boys in the Band our summer show. And then for the fall, we are doing another play by Mary Darling called Period. And so that's Balefire's whole season. But so we have auditions for Last Gas coming up January 16th and 17th.
Yes, Mary's writing 2 plays right now that are both committed, which is great, right?
Yeah.
Like they both have dates. That's amazing. And thank God for my husband who like oversees me. Sometimes it's like, hey, are you working? And I have to be like, get out of here, but tell me to work.
Yeah.
So yes, we're doing that, and that's going to be really exciting. We hope. Period is a all-women show, mostly, and it just touches on a bunch of different themes. And it's cool, another workshop-y thing, right? Like, it had a really early bones. I had done a reading of it years ago in Cape May, and Leo asked if I had a show like that. I was like, I'm going to have this. It's kind of old. And now I'm here putting a through line through it like I did with On Our Terms because it's vignettes. So that was like, let's tie these together and let's make it a little more current because it's old. So I'm doing that. So Leo's doing that, and that's amazing. We're going to workshop Leo's play. That's obviously on our agenda. So I'm going to reiterate that.
Because I'm at that point where it's like, I need to do that.
He needs it, and we're doing it. And then I am putting my hands on Our Terms in Southbridge the first weekend in April. So I do have auditions coming up on January 6th. I know we haven't even talked about this, Leo.
I know, rude. I don't even know.
I know. It's because it's been a million moving pieces.
I know.
And so I've been waiting on like the final words, but I'm excited because obviously I'll be talking to you about it because whatever, I need to pick your brain as well.
Yeah.
But I'm excited because I haven't really done work in my town yet. So I've gotten stuff done in Worcester, Fitchburg, and I'm from Worcester, but I don't live there anymore. And Lowell, like Cape May, but I live in Southbridge. So it's kind of exciting that they're like, yeah, okay. So I'm actually doing it at a bar space that's also kind of like an unconventional, neat little space. And then so over the weekend I previewed scenes from a new play I have called The Translator, which is the one I was like, it's kind of like On Our Terms, is more sophisticated something. Yeah. And the response was really great from audiences. It's kind of the idea of someone translating for you in a relationship, like when you can't get the tough stuff out. So it was really well received. I'm trying to do a full production of that, and I have gotten space for it as my first season of self-producing, but I don't think I want to direct it, so I'm going to move those pieces, but that's going to be in late summer. And then I will be taking my hands on Good Grief. That was a weird way to put it. Putting my hands on, I don't know, whatever.
It's fine.
I'm gonna be
your hands are on it somewhere,
again.
yeah.
I'm going to be putting my hands back on there. Drawing back to the original inspiration to do it in the round at a cool ding ding, drum roll please, gallery space in Putnam.
Oh.
Yes, and you'll be coming. But that's beside the point.
I'm definitely coming.
And I'm gonna do it again because I think it is one of those pieces that like I kind of just think has to get in front of more people because especially around the holidays, it's a tough time, and I think I want to open that door for people to like have those dialogues and those discussions like and feel something. Like they're not alone during those times. So that's what's on deck for me in the coming, 2023, whatever year we're on.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to thank you both for talking to me today.
We talked a lot, sorry.
We did talk
Talking
a
at
lot.
you
We did
or,
talk a lot.
Like, maybe never do two guests again unless you want them to like vomit all over you with what they're doing.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all so much for listening to Martian Radio at the Theater. My name's Ryan Perry, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Hey gang, this is Wednesday, and you've been listening to a Martian Radio program. Martian Radio Theatre is a queer art collective based in Lowell, Massachusetts, focused on creating space for queer voices and experimenting with different media. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, and Instagram. Wherever we are, you can almost always find us using the tag @MartianRadio Theatre. Check out our website, MartianRadioTheatre.space, for cool upcoming local events and to sign up for our newsletter. And we hope you support us by sharing our work, talking kindly of us to folk, or becoming a patron at patreon.com/MartianRadioTheatre. To repeat that, our social media is at Martian Radio Theatre. Our website is www.martianradiotheatre.space. And our Patreon is patreon.com/MartianRadioTheatre. Hope we get to spend time together again soon. But till then, happy trails, partner. Take care.